Excuse me, but I think you're in the wrong place.
The man standing in front of me said in a cold tone. I bet he didn't really realize it was rude. He spoke monotonously, like a machine. I was having a great time just moments ago. How did it come to this? Our first family vacation in a while took an unexpected turn. My name is John Mitchell. I'm an average office worker with a wife and daughter. I'm nearing retirement soon, and once I retire, I just want to relax with my wife. When I say I got married at 37, some might think that's a bit late. I have focused solely on my job since joining the company, never really considering marriage. I thought living alone was just fine. Then one day, I suddenly found myself on an arranged date. My nosy aunt took it upon herself to set it up, seeing me alone for so long. She shouldn't have. I felt reluctant, but I didn't want to be rude and cancel, so I had no choice. And that's when I met Catherine. I fell for her at first sight. She was around my age, a very calm and kind-hearted woman. She must have been raised with a lot of love. She had a serene personality, and that made me feel safe. I made an aggressive move on her, started dating, and a year later, she became my wife. Oddly enough, though I'd never been interested in starting a family before, after getting married, I started thinking that I would like to have children. She felt the same, and we tried everything to have a child. But life was tough, and even at the age of 40, we still hadn't conceived yet. Around this time, we began volunteering to foster rescued dogs and cats, taking care of them as if they were our own children. We had almost given up on having children when my nosy aunt approached us again. She brought up adoption through an acquaintance who worked at an orphanage. By then, we were in our mid-40s and felt uneasy about raising a child, but we thought it might be our last chance and visited the facility. That's where we met Sarah. The first time I saw her, I thought she resembled my wife. She was just 2, but she had a calm demeanor and was just so cute. And so, she became our beloved daughter. Without the usual transition to parenthood, it was quite an adjustment for us. We sought advice and listened to stories from experienced parents, and we found out there was a big difference between knowing and doing. Together, with its ups and downs, we raised her. 14 years later,
Time sure flies.
my wife said, gazing at our now adult daughter, Sarah, I'm just grateful she grew up healthy. Sarah, influenced by her mother, grew up to be a kind woman who loves animals. She's currently attending a university with a veterinary program, aspiring to be a vet. Despite our busy lives with work, school, and daily chores, we decided to take a family vacation this summer. Coordinating with Sarah's summer break, I applied for summer vacation at work. Combining her 16th birthday celebration, we booked a famous luxury hotel in a mountain resort in the Rockies. It's okay to be luxurious every once in a while, right? Sarah mentioned moving out after graduation, so we may not be able to go on family trips for a while. The day finally arrived, and we were all excited. First of all, we headed to a bird sanctuary in the Rockies. We listened to the tour guide's detailed commentary as we observed the wildlife. It was a place my wife had always wanted to visit. Watching her get so engrossed like a child, I felt contented and thinking, I'm glad we came here. Next, at Sarah's request, we visited a horse riding club. Riding a horse was one of her dreams, so it finally came true for her. While I was taking a delightful photo of her, I felt nostalgic thinking how she has grown, and I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Maybe it's my age, but I've become more emotional lately. I wonder if I could hold back my tears if she ever got married. As the sun set, we finally headed to the hotel. This is incredible. As we stepped into the hotel, I couldn't help but let out a sigh. It was truly lavish. A sparkling chandelier hung from the ceiling. The spacious lobby was lined with luxurious sofas and tables. I wonder if we're out of place here, I whispered to myself. When I glanced at Catherine, my wife, she looked tense and was seeing the surroundings. She must have been feeling nervous. I'll go check us in, just sit tight. I left our bags with them and headed to the front desk. It seemed to be peak season, as there was a long line at the desk. After waiting for a while, it was finally my turn. I gave my name to the female staff at the desk, but she looked confused. She asked me for my name and phone number again. After providing it, she said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, but I can't find any reservation under your name for today." Panicking, I showed her the confirmation email I received from the booking website. "I definitely booked for 3 of us today. Could you please check again?" As I was pleading, a man came out from behind the front desk. His name tag read manager. The manager listened to the female staff, then looked at me with a skeptical face and said,
Excuse me, sir. Are you sure you're at the right place?
For a moment, I didn't understand what he meant. "Huh? I'm sure it's this hotel."
We are a luxury hotel, you know. You've got some nerve coming and dressed like that.
The manager stared at me a once over from head to toe. I see what he means. Indeed, my attire didn't match the upscale ambience of the place. I was wearing an old t-shirt and pants splattered with some mud. There was a reason for my appearance. You see, there was a little accident at the horse riding club. Just when we were about to leave, it started raining heavily with thunder, so we rushed for shelter. However, Sarah spotted some staff members trying to round up the distant horses and rushed over to help. I quickly followed her, and together with the staff, we managed to get the horses to safety, but not before getting completely drenched. Fortunately, we had spare clothes in our bag. She changed into a dress, and I into my old t-shirt, but I didn't have spare pants, so I just wiped them off with a towel and headed straight to the hotel. I tried to explain to the manager, "I'm sorry for the way I look, but we do have a reservation," but he didn't seem to listen.
Therefore, I think this reservation is for the rundown hotel next door. We cater to the affluent, you know. If you're just browsing, please leave.
The manager was stubborn and unwilling to check. It might be pointless to argue further. There were other hotels nearby, so we could ask if they had vacancies. As I turned to leave, my wife stood there.
You should pick your battles.
She wasn't looking at me but was staring intensely at the manager.
Mrs. Mitchell.
He suddenly freaked out and turned pale upon seeing my wife. Why does he know her name?
If this is the hospitality you provide, if this continues, I might reconsider our contract.
My wife, who's usually calm, seemed quite upset. What's going on? I asked my wife, not understanding.
Sorry to surprise you, but actually, I'm the one who provided the land for this hotel.
What? I knew her family owned land and had passed it down for generations, but I had never heard of the details.
My father entrusted me with this land, which was brimming with beautiful nature, so I've always wanted to protect it.
It seems she initially strongly opposed the idea of building a hotel here. But she was convinced by the hotel's founder, who promised never to harm the lush environment. He wanted to make it a place where visitors could truly feel and appreciate the richness of nature. Knowing my wife, who cherishes plants and animals, she must have struggled a lot with the decision to lease the land. The only condition for offering the land was to create a place that is loved by the best environment and hospitality. But since the change in management, things have apparently shifted. The hotel took a luxurious turn targeting the affluent, starting to cut down the beautiful greenery within the premises to add more rooms. Its lavish interiors became the talk of the town, covered in various media. but it seemed to have gradually deviated from its original concept. When my wife visited here previously, the manager apparently managed to deceive her.
Where has the hospitality gone, where we used to welcome guests like family?
Looking into my wife's pleading eyes, the manager turned pale and said, "I'm truly sorry," apologized over and over again.
Actually, ever since that big hotel opened near the train station, our guests started to decrease.
That's no excuse.
He desperately searched for words, apologizing repeatedly to both of us. It seems after being covered by the media, they had a more diverse range of guests, some of whom unfortunately had poor manners. The manager had become paranoid, overly cautious of new guests. Later, he reconfirmed our reservation. Apparently, there was a temporary glitch in the integration between the booking website I used and the hotel system. The manager called the booking site's representative and confirmed our reservation. The hotel was fully booked, but he took us to a room set aside for emergencies. For dinner, we enjoyed a course meal in celebration of Sarah's coming of age. As an apology, the manager offered several dishes on the house. While the evening had taken an unexpected turn, in the end, we were treated to a lovely room and delicious food. Relieved to have secured a place to sleep for the night, I felt drained. All's well that ends well. Or so I thought. The journey wasn't over. Just as we were about to go to bed after a bath, my daughter hesitated and spoke up.
Dad, Mom, you guys have a minute.
Saying that, she took something out of her bag.
It's a letter of gratitude. I usually feel too embarrassed to say these things, but I thought I'd take this opportunity.
My wife and I exchanged surprised glances.
We didn't realize you had prepared something so special.
Catherine replied with joy.
Since it's a big deal, I'd like to have you read it.
She was blushing, but went on to read the letter.
Mom, Dad, I've finally turned 16. I'm an adult now. Thank you for raising me. I couldn't believe it when I first heard we weren't related by blood. After all, many people have told me that I look and act a lot like both of you. By spending a lot of times together, we might become a real family. Both of you always seemed self-conscious about your age, like when you came to my elementary school sports day or parent-teacher conferences. All my friends' parents were so young, and you'd apologize. But to me, you two are the parents I'm most proud of. After I graduate, I want to dedicate myself fully to helping the animals I love. And someday, I want to repay your kindness. I'll take you wherever you want to go. So let's have another family trip together. Please stay healthy and live long. I look forward to our future together.
After reading the letter, she smiled shyly. I was fighting back tears. Next to me, Catherine was hugging Sarah, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you crying?" Sarah said with a laugh, her eyes glistening with tears. We spent the night reminiscing about our past memories. Even though we stayed up late and were sleep deprived, the next morning felt incredibly refreshing. I'm truly blessed to have such a wonderful family. I want to spend the rest of my life with this precious family.
My name is Harrison Davis, a 27-year-old office worker. I'm living a normal life now, but I grew up very poor. How poor, you ask? There was never dinner at my home. My mom worked late into the night and left early in the morning for work, yet we still struggled. Both time and money were scarce, making it impossible to prepare dinner. My mom worked so hard because of the debt my father left behind. My father ran away, leaving my mom as the guarantor of his debt, so my mom raised me all by herself while repaying the debt. For that, I respect her tremendously. Though it was only breakfast, I love my mom's cooking the most. However, I was always hungry. During the day, there was lunch at school, but in the evening, despite the delicious smells wafting from other houses, I couldn't eat anything. To distract myself from the hunger, I would roam the streets after school. One day, while walking alone as usual, I saw a person wandering with a lunch box in the hand for some reason. Judging from the uniform, that person seemed to be a high school girl. She had long, black hair and a mole under her left eye. As a child, I felt she is beautiful, and I was watching her. Then she tried to throw away the contents of her lunch box into a trash can in front of a gas station. "Hey, you're going to throw that away," I blurted out in surprise. She looked at me, who had spoken to her out of the blue, and seemed a little embarrassed.
It doesn't matter. I'm full.
"Really? It looks delicious though."
This stuff isn't tasty at all. Even if I'm hungry, I wouldn't want to eat.
"I'm really hungry, so I'd like to eat it."
Do you want to eat this then?
"Really?" I responded eagerly, and she took me to a nearby park. We sat on a bench there, and she spread her lunch box in front of me. "This looks delicious." The contents of the lunch box were all luxurious foods I'd never eaten before. I was so happy that I gobbled it up right away.
You eat really fast. Were you that hungry?
Yeah, I can usually only eat twice a day.
What? Why?
When I explained the reason, she looked very surprised. We parted ways that day, but I met her again in front of the same gas station the next day. She was wandering around with another lunch box in her hand. I rushed over to her, but this time it seemed she wasn't going to throw it away.
I thought about throwing this away again, but I remembered you and started looking for you. Do you want to eat again today?
I know, I want to eat.
What's your name?
Harrison Davis, 4th grade elementary school. And you are?
Fine, Mia. I'm a senior in high school. Nice to meet you.
From that day on, I started to meet Mia at the park and receive a lunch box from her. Having a proper dinner was an irreplaceable joy for me. Such life continued for about a week, and then there was a change in the contents of the lunch box.
Look, you said you like sweet omelet the other day, right? I included it today.
Really? Yay?
Hey, you mentioned you don't like carrots, but if you chop them up finely and mix them with sauce, they taste really good. Give it a try.
What? It's true, it's delicious. Even the carrots, which I disliked, were overcome by the deliciousness of Maya's lunchbox. At first, the side dishes were rather bland, but once I told my likes and dislikes, they reflected my preferences and became more colorful. The meal I looked forward to the most every day became Maya's lunchbox. Perhaps there's a certain excitement unique to lunch boxes, wondering what's in it today. That's different from my mom's cooking. Mia was dressed in the uniform of a prestigious girls' school in the city. Her mannerisms were elegant, and she seemed to live in a world different from mine. Why would such a person be kind to me? Why did Mia have a lunch box, which she does not need, in the first place? In hindsight, it's quite a mysterious story. But I felt that if I upset Mia, I wouldn't be able to eat any more, so I just devoured the lunch without asking anything. However, such happy days didn't last long. As the new year turned to spring, Mia said, "This is the last lunch. I can't come here anymore. I'm sorry." I didn't know why Mia left at the time, but looking back, she probably went to college out of town. The lunch box filled with only my favorite foods became the last taste. I thought I'd go back to not being able to eat dinner again, but before Mia left, she told me about a community center run by the local government. There was a service where children could eat for free, and I started going there every day. While I no longer had to worry about hunger, parting with Mia was tough. I couldn't forget about Mia, who kindly gave lunch boxes to a stranger like me. From such childhood experiences, I strongly realized that food is indispensable for survival. There's nothing more representative of abundance and happiness than being able to eat delicious food. With that in mind, I wanted to get a job related to food and studied hard since middle school. As a result, I got a job at a major company that does consulting for the restaurant industry. Now I can give my mom a little break. When I got a starting salary, I took my mom to a fancy French full course. After joining the company, I realized that there are so many delicious things in this world. Being affluent means having so many food options, and I was amazed. But the most delicious food is still my mom's cooking, and Maya's lunchbox. No matter how delicious food I eat, that hasn't changed. 5 years after joining the company, I, now 27, was assigned a big project for the first time. It's about a new creative dining bar. The target is office workers, and I'm proposing a wide range of menus from Western to Japanese cuisine. In addition, if we offer a takeout, we can expect people to come and buy during lunchtime due to the location. We put effort into the interior and advertising, but the key is the food. We've had several meetings with the owner, but it's been difficult to find a main chef because of the high level of demand. For market research, I've been eating at nearby restaurants. In the midst of this, there was a store that caught my attention. It's a small lunchbox shop, but every single lunchbox is delicious. Though I need to check out numerous stores, I found myself repeatedly drawn to that one lunchbox store. It wasn't as though their menu was new or exotic, but it had a magnetic pull, making me want to eat there over and over again. I wondered who could make such cuisine. The only person in the store was a gruff, elderly storekeeper. Apparently, the person doing the actual cooking was in the back kitchen. Peering into the kitchen, I could see a pink apron but couldn't make out the wearer's face. One day, as usual, I was buying my lunch box and about to head back to the office. I heard angry voices from the back alley. When I looked, the storekeeper was yelling at someone.
"You could quit any time, for all I care."
The man berated the individual mercilessly and returning to his shop. Out of curiosity, I glanced at the woman. She was wearing the same pink apron. Could it be her? Wait, what? In surprise, I found myself instinctively walking towards her. It was Mia, the woman who used to give me homemade lunch box when I was in elementary school. Although it's been over 15 years, the moment our eyes met, all my memories came flooding back. She looked much more worn out, but her beautiful features and the mole under her left eye were still the same. "Mia."
Who might you be?
"It's me, Harrison Davis. Remember, you used to share your lunch box with me when I was a kid in the park."
Oh my, could it be? Is that you, Davis?
I was overjoyed that Mia remembered me. By chance, we had reconnected, and I invited Mia out to dinner that very night. I took her to an Italian restaurant where I'd once done some consulting work with a senior colleague. However, the moment we entered the restaurant, Mia declared, "I'm going home." "Why, this is a fantastic place."
I can tell that just by looking. It just seems expensive, and I don't have much money.
"Don't worry about that. It's on me tonight." I had planned to cover the bill from the start, so I convinced Mia to stay. Once we were in the private room, I ordered a variety of recommended dishes and drinks.
You've grown up to be quite the man, Davis. Our tables have turned completely.
Mia said so shyly, looking at me. Once I finished ordering, dressed in a worn-out cardigan and jeans, with her hair not quite tidied, Mia was a stark contrast to her high school self who always dressed in fine clothes. I wondered what had happened to her while we were apart. Sensing the awkward silence, Mia began to share her story up to this point.
Do you know of the company called Smith Industries, Davis?
Yes, I do. It's a well-known big business back in our hometown.
Well, that's actually my father's company. My full name is Mia Smith.
Really? I was surprised to learn that Mia was a president's daughter. It suddenly made sense why she had gone to a prestigious school and had such a refined upbringing. Mia used to live a wealthy lifestyle that any person would admire, but it seems that the Smith household was rather cold. Her mother had passed away from illness. Her father was always with his mistress, and her sister, 5 years older than her, was always out partying. The only person at home was a malicious housekeeper. Mia said she had always been longing for the warmth of family. On that day, the lunchbox that was about to be thrown away was made by the housekeeper. However, it was filled with foods that Mia disliked. Apparently, it was the housekeeper's way of messing with Mia, who was in her rebellious phase at the time.
I couldn't feel bit of love in it, and I thought I'd rather starve to death than eat it. But when I was about to throw it away, you looked at me with sparkling eyes and asked, "You're throwing it away?" I felt strange when I washed the lunchbox after coming home that day.
Food, which she had only considered as something to fill her stomach, might carry a deeper meaning. Thinking so, she began to go to the park again to see me enjoying the meals.
At first, the housekeeper was making it, but eventually, I started making them.
Really? I noticed the taste and appearance changed, but you were actually making them yourself.
Yes, because you, Davis, were the only place I belonged. I found joy in catering to your preferences and finding ways to eliminate dislikes.
Having discovered the joy of cooking, she went to a college to study food science. However, her father's company went bankrupt while she was in a college. Mia dropped out of college, and her family fell apart. Yet, Mia managed to get her cooking and nutritionist certifications and worked diligently. But her wasteful sister came, begging for money, and pushed her even further down the hole. Her sister disappeared with a man, leaving Mia to take on all the debts. She explained how this led to her current impoverished lifestyle.
I became sick and am not able to work full-time anymore. Now I work at the lunchbox shop and do night shifts at a factory.
But isn't the treatment there terrible? With your skills, you could work at other places.
I'm already 35. It's impossible. I'm actually worried they might fire me.
Hearing about the hardships she faced due to her family's debts, I couldn't help but look down. However, I felt more than just sympathy. Despite her hardships, Mia was facing forward and trying hard. Her interest in food, her efforts, it was as if I was looking at myself. I looked straight at Mia and said, "Mia, you said our tables have turned, right?
Yeah.
Then it's my turn now. I'll support you."
What do you mean?
Mia looked puzzled, but I had made a firm decision. I had always wanted to give back to her. Now it's time. A few days later, I took Mia to that creative dining bar. There, I asked the owner, please hire her as the main chef. The owner asked Mia to cook a few dishes for him to taste. After tasting them, the owner nodded greatly.
I see. She's definitely more than capable.
After discussing with the owner, they agreed to offer me a package that would allow her not to work multiple jobs. As a result, the diner thrived. One review, despite being a fashionable diner, the dishes are really homey and it's amazing, that attracted more and more customers. The takeout lunch boxes were particularly popular. Mia kept coming up with new menus to cater to the diverse clients. It became a hot topic, and even the media came to interviews. I, who had consulted for the restaurant, joined them too.
What is the appeal of this restaurant?
It's the thoughtfulness of the owner and Harrison Davis who consulted for us. Eventually, I want to offer takeout that parents can bring home to their children as gifts.
Hearing that, I was taken aback. Mia was looking at me and smiling happily. Even in poverty, we can still possess richness of the heart. I learned that from my mom and Mia. Sooner, I'm thinking about inviting Mia to join me in volunteering for a child support program. I want to continue doing my very best to provide tasty meals to as many people as possible. Today, on the way back from the third date, where I felt nervous, wondering if I might be rejected, Yuko stopped in front of the entrance of the apartment building where she lives alone, turned around, and bowed to me.
I hope we can continue seeing each other.
In the context of a matchmaking agency, this means she's hoping for a serious relationship with marriage in mind. I couldn't believe what was happening. and my mind went blank for a moment. I mean, I'm a 43-year-old factory worker, didn't go to the university, and only earn $30,000 a year. In contrast, Susan is a university graduate working for a top-tier company, earning $70,000 a year at 38. It seems completely we are mismatched, and among all the potential partners I've met through marriage agencies, I can confidently say that she is by far the most favorable candidate. Susan was adorable with a charming personality that naturally made people smile. On the other hand, I was shy and struggled to have a conversation, had no experience with women, and was always rejected before even reaching the next date stage in arranged meetings. I believe that this is influenced by my own past experience. When I was 4, a drunk man threw away a cigarette, and it accidentally ignited the combustible trash outside. This incident caused a fire that engulfed our house.
Please, save Bob.
Amidst the raging blaze, my mother handed me over to a firefighter from the debris. I barely survived, but when my parents were rescued, they had already passed away. After that, during discussions at the funeral, it was decided that I would be taken in by distant relatives in Tokyo. But shortly after I started living with them, I was put in a facility. Having closed off my heart after losing my parents, I was bullied by the other children at the facility and classmates, leading to a dark and lonely childhood. After graduating from high school and leaving the facility, I started working in a factory, but I find it difficult to communicate well with not only friends but also with my colleagues. When I thought about facing a lonely old age, I was overwhelmed by loneliness and fear. That was when I visited a marriage agency, hoping to find someone who would accept me despite my shortcomings. I'm sorry, but I don't understand why you would be interested in me. I accidentally let my true feelings slip. Then, Susan gave me an elegant smile.
You're wrong to say that you have no redeeming features. I was drawn to your sincere and kind personality.
After saying that, her face clouded over.
But once you hear about me, you might change your mind.
What she confessed was that she had become unable to have children due to endometriosis she suffered from when she was young. That's why she had not been able to get married until now, despite her good conditions.
If you wish to be with a young woman who can bear children, I am prepared to accept that.
As she said that, I could see a tinge of sadness on her face, even though she tried to hide it. I clenched my fists and looked into Susan's eyes. The woman I want to marry is not someone who can bear children, but you, Susan. My feelings will not change. At that moment, a tear trickled down from Susan's eyes.
Thank you. I'm so happy.
From that day on, we began a serious relationship with marriage in mind. Because of Yuko's frequent business trips both domestically and internationally, we had to schedule our dates according to her availability, giving priority to her busy schedule.
I'm sorry we don't get to see each other very often.
Susan had a guilty expression, but her thoughtfulness in contacting me frequently, no matter how busy she was, made me very happy. Even when we couldn't see each other, I felt that she was thinking about me, and her warmth was transmitted through her emails. After going on several dates and visiting each other's homes, I found out she was terrible at housework. Apparently, it was because she had lived with her parents for a long time, and they had a housekeeper at home, so she never had the opportunity to learn household tasks from her mother. After starting living by herself, she tried to do the chores herself but wasn't good at it, and being swamped with work left her with no time. As a result, she currently has a housekeeper come in twice a week to clean and do the laundry, and she usually eats out or relies on meals from supermarkets, said embarrassedly.
To be honest, one of the major reasons why I've not been able to get married up until now is that I can't do housework. After meeting you, Bob, I thought I should practice and get better at it, but it seems I haven't improved at all.
I was both surprised and relieved to discover this aspect of her, considering she appears to be perfect with her excellent work performance, intelligence, and kindness. It made her feel more endearing and charming to me. I've lived alone for a long time, so I'm used to housework and even enjoy it. I think the one who's good at it should do it. I smiled and placed the freshly baked macaroni gratin on the table. Just watching her happily eating the gratin, blowing on it to cool it down, and saying, "This is so delicious," made me feel truly content. A year later, I proposed to Susan. I thought of various places to propose, like a restaurant with a beautiful night view or a beautiful beach at sunset, but I decided it would be best to do it in my own style, in my own room. After treating her to a special dinner, I placed an engagement ring on the dessert plate. "Susan, will you marry me?" With those simple words, devoid of any pretension, Susan smiled and replied, "Yes, with pleasure," and I put the ring on her left ring finger. It may not have been so romantic, but for me, it felt like an incredibly euphoric, almost dreamlike happiness. A month after the proposal, I was scheduled to visit Susan's parents' home, but I was so nervous. Her father works for a top-tier company and is an elite with experience working in the United States and Singapore. I thought there was no way that such parents would accept someone like me.
This is the apartment where my parents live.
Looking up at the sky as Susan said that, I was in awe. It was a high-rise apartment building in a prime location of New York. I had been wondering what kind of mansion they lived in, but I never expected it to be an apartment.
We used to live in a house, but when I started living alone and because it was just the two of them, they moved to an apartment.
The fact that they didn't hold the conventional belief that a home is for life suggested they have a lot of experience overseas. Being in the elevator, it felt like a long journey until we reached the 38th floor, where her parents lived. Sweat trickled down my forehead, and my knees trembled slightly from nervousness.
Don't be so stiff. My parents are laid-back people, so it'll be all right.
I tried to return Susan's words with a smile, but my cheeks spasmed, and I couldn't smile properly. When the doorbell rang, a sophisticated woman, Susan's mother, responded after a while and opened the front door for us.
Welcome, please come in.
Despite being greeted with a friendly smile, my heart was pounding loudly and I could barely manage to bow. Thanks to Susan's gentle prompt with her eyes, I managed to hand over the high-end confectionery shop's cake I brought as a gift. I was led by her mother through a long corridor to the living room. The living room was spacious, with large windows, giving it a feeling of openness that made me forget they were in an apartment. On a large sofa, there was an elegant gentleman with silver gray hair, casually sipping his coffee. As I was thinking, indeed, people from the upper class are different, Susan's father narrowed his eyes upon noticing me.
Hey there, we've been waiting for you. Please, take a seat.
Guided by Susan, I sat down next to her and faced her parents. I was trembling all over with tension. Without a doubt, I had never ever been so nervous in my over 40 years of life. Nice to meet you. I'm Bob Custard. I've been seeing Susan. As I bowed deeply, I felt a change in the atmosphere above my head. When I lifted my face, her parents looked surprised.
Custard.
My last name is quite rare, and they exchanged glances, seemingly curious.
What are your parents' names?
I was wondering why she would ask such a thing, but I said, my father's name is Liam, and my mother's is Emma. Come to think of it, I have one old photo left. When I pulled out my wallet, I took out an old photo from it and showed it to Susan's parents. It was a picture of me as a baby, held by my mother, with my father smiling next to us. At that moment, Susan's held their breath.
No way.
Suddenly, Susan's mother started to sob, and her father looked down, shaking as he clenched his fists. I thought they were sympathizing with me, but their reaction was far from ordinary.
As a matter of fact, our families have known each other since we were children. We're from the same small town.
Her father said, "Really, is that true?" Taken aback by the surprising coincidence, her parents began to tell stories from the past. Apparently, they were born and raised in a rural area and went to the same high school together. After graduating from high school, my parents stayed in our small town. They got married, my father took over the family farm, and my mom helped him. Meanwhile, Susan's parents moved to New York, her father went to college, and her mom got a job. After her father graduated, they got married. Even though they were apart, they kept in touch with each other and visited during Thanksgiving and Christmas. But when Susan's father got transferred to work in Canada, they could only communicate by letters and couldn't meet for a long time. Then, they lost contact. When they returned home temporarily with baby Susan, they found out that my parents had passed away a year before. They were heartbroken to hear that only their son had survived a fire, but they were relieved to know that I had relatives who could take care of me. They had to return to Canada soon, so they couldn't meet me.
If we had been living in America, we would have taken Bob in.
Susan's mother said apologetically.
Bob's parents were the ones who brought us together.
What? In their student days, Susan's father was mean to Susan's mother, whom he liked, and she didn't like him. My father convinced Susan's father by saying, "If you like her, don't be mean to her." And my mother cleared up Susan's mother's misunderstanding by saying, "William just likes Olivia so much, that's why he can't stop it." Thanks to this, their feelings for each other grew closer. The year I was born, Susan's parents got married, and my parents, with baby me in tow, attended their wedding. Susan's mother held me and joked to my parents, "If we have a daughter, maybe we should betroth them."
I can't believe such a thing could happen.
Susan's mother spoke nostalgically. Listening to the story, I was moved by the miraculous encounter, but I also felt daunted about marrying her, so I expressed my honest feelings. Actually, I was raised in an orphanage. I'm just a high school graduate working in a factory. My salary isn't even half of what Susan makes. I don't think I'm the right man for her. When I negated myself like that, Susan looked sad and called out, "Bob." I squeezed her hand and then faced her parents again. But I promise, I love Susan more than anyone else, and I always will. Hearing my vow, her parents smiled at each other.
We want you to make Susan happy. Please take good care of her.
Susan's father gripped my hand firmly, and I gripped back just as firmly. Susan and her mother were looking at us with smiles.
"Daddy, hurry up." "Come on, Mom, you too."
Being tugged on by the children, I exchanged smiles with Susan. After we got married, we decided to adopt 2 children from the orphanage where I grew up. We thought a life just for the 2 of us would also be great, but we both liked children, and having known the loneliness of being parentless, I wanted to give these children a warm home. That's why we decided to adopt them. But once we did, we felt that the children were giving us so many smiles and so much happiness.
Hey Daddy, you'll cook us a fancy dinner because Mom is home today, right? I want a burger and curry.
Being pestered by the children, I answered enthusiastically, "All right, let's make burger curry today."
Yay!
The kids were overjoyed. I truly cherish the happiness of having people I love and people who love me. Susan is still busy with work, flying around the country and overseas every day. Now she has a position with 500 employees under her. Meanwhile, the factory where I work has reduced working hours due to the recession, and my salary has decreased significantly. Because of that, I'm taking care of all the housework and drop off and pick up the kids every day. The kids tease me, saying dad's like mom and mom's like dad. I'm sorry I'm putting a burden on Susan because I don't make much money. I apologized, feeling guilty, and Susan laughed.
Bob, you know I'm not good at doing housework. I should be thanking you. You take care of the children and always help me. This kind of partnership is also wonderful. The most important thing is that we are happy together.
Seeing Susan's radiant smile, I pledged to myself that I'll protect that smile forever. Through a floor-to-ceiling window of glass, the warm spring sunlight pours down. At the center of a pure white tablecloth, there's a charming centerpiece made of mainly white and yellow flowers with a sprinkling of green, and around it are white plates and silver cutlery all set up. Beside me, Sophia, dressed in a pure white wedding dress, sits, her face overflowing with a smile that is even more beautiful and happy than usual. Without any feeling of stiffness, I'm glad we chose this restaurant as our wedding venue, considering not only ourselves but all of our guests could enjoy it. I have no doubt it's going to be the best day of my life. As I was thinking that, a bucket of cold water was poured over me in the form of a speech.
Well, I heard that Mr. Davis only finished high school. It's surprising that Miss Taylor, an elite who graduated from a top-tier university like me and works for a listed company, would choose someone like that as his marriage partner. I suppose it's that hardship is worth buying, right?
Those words were spoken by Mr. Wilson, Sophia's boss at work. It seems like he thinks it's funny, but nobody is laughing, and an uncomfortable atmosphere has settled over the venue. To bring up that conversation at a toast. While thinking that, I remembered that time.
It's finally the wedding.
In the bridal suite, Sophia, though nervous, spoke to me with an excited expression, and I smiled back at her. Yeah, let's make it a good day. Then, my phone buzzed with a notification. Seeing my face darken as I read the message, Sophia asked if something had happened. Lucas and the others' plane is going to arrive later than scheduled, so they might not make it in time for the speech. We were expecting 3 people, including Lucas, to give toasts as the groom's principal guests. I left Sophia in the bridal suite and stepped out. I immediately told the master of ceremonies about the situation, and we decided to move forward with the toasts from Sophia's side first. Also, to let him know about the change in order, I started looking for Mr. Wilson. Since I didn't know him personally, I asked Sophia's co-worker where he was and then approached him. "Excuse me, Mr. Wilson." I asked him if he could give his toast first because the groom's principal guests were running late, and he readily agreed.
But marrying Miss Taylor, you're a lucky man. She's the idol of our department, no, our company.
I felt like there was more to his statement than just a simple congratulations. Sophia had once mentioned that her boss was a bit too friendly and it bothered her, and I wondered if he could be the one she was talking about. By the way, Sophia and I had already registered our marriage, so her surname had changed from Taylor to Davis, and she had already informed her workplace of this. I guessed he was just used to calling her by her maiden name, but it also felt like he was doing it on purpose.
I guess the partner of Miss Taylor must have graduated from a famous top-tier university, right?
I felt something catch, but I answered him. I didn't go to university.
Oh, so Mr. Davis is a high school graduate then?
Yes, I am. I am embarrassed to say that I do. At this, Mr. Wilson's polite demeanor completely changed and a condescending look crossed his face.
What? There are still people who only finish high school these days. I've lived for over 40 years and this is the first time I've met someone who only finished high school. For your information, I graduated from a top-tier university.
Even his tone changed. Feeling that he was trying to mount me, I casually brushed it off. That's impressive. I'm sorry for the sudden change, but I appreciate your understanding. When I returned to the bridal suite, Sophia asked if everything went okay with the change in toast order, and I told her it was fine. If I had told her about everything that happened, it was clear she would be upset. I didn't want to ruin the happy mood. After the ceremony, we moved directly to the reception. After a quick touch-up, I entered the venue and nervously delivered a welcome speech. When I glanced over, 3 seats at the groom's side of the head table were still empty. I had requested the MC to forego any introductions about the bride and groom's background because we wanted a casual wedding. Normally, after the toast, it would be time for the groom's side to give their speeches. But as Lucas and the others had not arrived yet, I asked the bride's side to begin their speeches. Mr. Wilson stood up and walked forward. As he received the microphone from the MC, the speech began. It started with the customary words of celebration, and then a story came up about how Sophia had been a sort of idol at their company. But then the mood changed.
I understand that Mr. Davis is a high school graduate. It's surprising that Miss Taylor, a top-tier university graduate and a professional in a listed company, would choose someone like him as her spouse. I suppose hardship is something you should pursue, even if you have to buy it.
Although he seemed to think his words were funny, no one laughed and an awkward atmosphere filled the room. Undeterred, Mr. Wilson continued.
Mr. Davis, who not only earns a small salary, but if he loses his job, and when Ms. Taylor took on these hardships, please remember that I, a dependable person, am always available.
I was taken aback by Mr. Wilson's audacity, as he looked down on me and even tried to appeal to Sophia, the bride. But Sophia, on the other hand, was furious and stood up.
Mr. Wilson, enough is enough. What's your intention?
Mr. Wilson was taken aback by Sophia's momentum and made excuses with a forced smile.
Well, I was simply concerned about you, who is marrying a man with such low education and income.
At that, Sophia sighed and murmured with a pitying expression.
Really, Mr. Wilson, you don't know anything.
But Mr. Wilson didn't understand Sophia's words.
What do you mean, I don't know anything?
Just then, a faint honking sound could be heard from outside. When I turned my eyes to the restaurant window, 3 luxury cars were approaching in succession. The cars each parked in the restaurant's parking lot. My friends, dressed in suits from well-known foreign brands, appeared, and when they noticed us watching, they waved with a smile. Mr. Wilson was stunned, as if he didn't know what was happening. They lowered their heads as if to apologize for being late as they entered. The MC announced the arrival of the late guests from the groom's side and said, "Sorry to rush, but could you please give your congratulatory speech to the bride and groom?" We waved Mr. Wilson off with smiles and welcomed Lucas and the others. After apologizing for their late arrival at the important wedding, they each gave their words of celebration.
We understood that we wanted a casual wedding, so there's no need for a resume introduction, but as his friends, can we introduce William's background?
The venue was stirred by Lucas's question. When I met their eyes, they smiled knowingly. Lucas, Daniel, Ethan, and I, the 4 of us, overcame the difficult exams and entered a challenging junior high school known as a feeder school. After graduating from junior high, I was supposed to go straight to high school, but my father was assigned to work in France and the whole family moved there. The school system in my area is 6 years of elementary school, 2 years of junior high school, and 4 years of high school. I decided to advance to first grade high school, taking language classes because it was difficult to keep up with French in the local area. The plan was to stay until high school graduation, but my father's work ended after 2 years and we returned to America. I could have transferred to a high school here, but I wasn't interested and decided to start my own business. My mother was worried, but my father agreed with my idea.
If you're going to do it all on your own.
With that in mind, I started by saving money from part-time jobs. During that time, I had a reunion with my junior high school friends. When I told them that I was thinking of starting a business, they all joined in. They were all thinking of starting their own businesses while in college. Lucas was majoring in business administration, Daniel in economics, and Ethan in information technology at college. We each used our knowledge to expand our networks and steadily prepared for starting our businesses. 2 years later, we pooled our money and started a business. Just 1 year after starting, we began making profits and steadily grew our business. Now, 10 years later, we are even doing business with major companies in Europe.
Indeed, William is only a high school graduate, but now he is running a successful business.
Lucas speaks, followed by Daniel.
Mr. Wilson will never have to shoulder the kinds of burdens Sophia does. Besides, considering your position, I don't think you make even a tenth of what William earns annually, so please don't worry. Haha.
Upon hearing this, the blood drains from Mr. Wilson's face. As it turns out, their friends at the wedding reception were filming and live streaming the event. That's how Lucas and the others were able to watch the proceedings even from afar. They'd naturally heard Mr. Wilson's speech as well. They were probably pissed at his behavior and decided to introduce my accomplishments to put him in his place. Mr. Wilson was shrinking into himself throughout the reception, as though he didn't know where to put himself. I heard later from Sophia's colleague that Mr. Wilson had indeed been after Sophia. He had accepted the wedding invitation and was asked to give a speech, and he seemed to have been harboring a one-sided grudge against me. That's why he gave that speech, trying to look down on me, but he got a perfect counterpunch. After the reception ends, we see off our families and relatives. It's time for the after party with friends only. The moment the reception ended, Mr. Wilson dashed out of the venue. Aren't you tired? We still have some time before the after party. Why don't you rest a bit? I called out to Sophia, but she shook her head lightly.
I'm fine. But about Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry. I never thought he'd do something so awful.
They say love can make people do crazy things. I guess Mr. Wilson was no different. But for a man in his 40s, his actions were overly childish. A lot of Sophia's colleagues and seniors were attending the wedding. Mr. Wilson's position from tomorrow onwards is going to be quite a difficult one. I'm sorry we missed the ceremony. Lucas and the others who stayed for the after party apologize after confirming that the other guests have left. It's okay, I'm glad you could make it to the reception, Sophia and I respond, both of us smiling.
I was upset when William was being ridiculed, but everyone's speeches made me feel a lot better.
We all burst out laughing, recalling Mr. Wilson's behavior. I thank Lucas and the others again. I'm really glad that I could reunite with Lucas, Daniel, and Ethan and start a business together. If I had started the business alone, I would have never achieved the success I have now. It's often said that co-founding a business with friends is difficult. Sure, we've had our disagreements and countless fights, but we've managed to overcome numerous challenges together, forging even stronger bonds. However, they all credited me for the initiative.
We wanted to start a business, but we lacked the courage to take the first step.
It was William who gave us the push we needed.
Seeing William forge ahead alone motivated us to take action.
And then the three of them look at Sophia.
Our lives changed when Sophia introduced us to William.
It turned out Sophia actually went to same high school. Back then, we weren't dating, but I like Sophia, and apparently, she also had a soft spot for me. When I told her I was moving to France, she asked for my contact information, and we'd been in touch ever since. It was Sophia who suggested getting together with our high school friends Lucas, Daniel, and Ethan after I returned from France.
Exactly. You should be thankful.
With that, Sophia joked with a smirk, but I answered with a serious face. I really am grateful to Sophia. She encouraged me when I was feeling lonely and isolated in France, never abandoned me even when I was just a high school dropout and broke, and she's always been there to support me. I'm so lucky to have met the best partner. Lucas and the others chuckle, obviously pleased.
Stop it. If I start crying again, I'll have to fix my makeup.
Even as she says this, Sophia looks happy. With Sophia, my life partner, and Lucas, Daniel, and Ethan, my business partners and best friends, I am filled with gratitude. I vow to stay true to my roots and continue striving for excellence.
I run a restaurant in a town far from the city center. I'm 40 years old, single, and run the restaurant with my mom. Originally, I worked as a chef in New York, but 3 years ago, my dad, who ran this restaurant, fell ill. After that incident, I returned home. My dad passed away, and as his only son, I took over the business. At first, I struggled to reproduce my dad's flavor for our regular customers, but once I got the hang of it, it became second nature. While I used to feel the monotony of life in New York, now I genuinely enjoy every day surrounded by friendly conversations with neighbors and regulars. It seems I prefer this slower pace of life over the hustle and bustle of the big city. Then, one evening, A young mother and daughter in faded clothes entered the restaurant. The young mother looked to be in her early 20s, and her daughter was just a toddler. They were unfamiliar faces in these parts, and on closer inspection, not only were their clothes faded, but they also seemed washed and stained in places. Although a bit suspicious, my mom and I silently escorted them to a table. After briefly glancing at the menu, the young mother ordered a single plate of chicken fried rice. Just one plate. With that thought in mind, I prepared and served the dish. The woman pushed the chicken fried rice to her daughter, saying, "Lucy, you can eat this."
Eat as much as you want.
With delight, the little girl started eating. I thought it might be too much for a child who looked to be around 3 or 4 years old, but she quickly finished the dish. When only one bite remained, the little girl scooped it up with her child-sized fork and said, "Open up, Mom."
It's okay. Lucy, you eat all of it.
Uh-huh. Mom is hungry too, right? You need to eat.
With tears in her eyes, her mother whispered, "Yeah."
Maybe just a bite.
The young mother then accepted the last bite, murmuring, "Delicious," and a single tear rolled down her cheek. I exchanged eye contact with my mom. "Something's off about those two, right?" My mom nodded subtly in agreement. Taking a deep breath, I approached them.
Thank you for coming in today. If you don't mind me asking, aren't you having anything to eat, ma'am?
Is it a rule here that each person has to order their own dish?
No, not at all. As I hesitated on how to proceed, my mom interjected.
You looked like you really enjoyed that chicken fried rice earlier. Aren't you hungry?
It's just...
The woman hesitated, looking distressed.
We don't have much money.
My mom and I exchanged looks. "Sorry if we're prying," my mom said with her usual warm demeanor.
We've been watching, and it just seems like you are in trouble. You're not from around here, and you don't seem like tourists.
The young woman looked even more puzzled. I took a moment to think and told her, "Please wait a moment," then returned to the kitchen. Quickly, I whipped up some spaghetti and set it on the table in front of her. "Please, eat."
But I can't. I really don't have any money.
"Don't worry about the money." My words were firm, and then my mom chimed in.
Honey, you look so worn out. I think you should eat something. Plus, I just have this feeling that we can't let you leave the diner like this.
Before my mom married my dad, she used to work as a counselor at the town hall. That was over 40 years ago, but maybe her instincts from back then kicked in.
Would you mind sharing your story with us?
The gentle expression on the old woman's face and her soft voice, and the steam rising from the freshly made spaghetti on the table. The tension seemed to melt away, and tears streamed down the young woman's face. My mom gently patted her back.
First, let's eat. We can talk afterward.
I quickly wrote "close for today" on a sheet of paper and stuck it to the diner's door.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
The woman said with a nasal voice and began eating warm spaghetti. When she finished, she began her story, seemingly unsure of where to start.
My daughter and I ran away from our home.
The young mother, named Catherine, faced opposition from her father about pursuing higher education when she was in high school. It might not resonate much with me, being a man, but apparently, in rural areas, there still seems to be a belief that women don't need education. Her father believed that even though the number of women entering the workforce has increased, the reality is that the rate of advancement is still low. Catherine, in her rebellious phase, went against his wishes and used the money she'd saved from her part-time job to secretly enroll in a college in New York. However, in New York, she fell in love with a young man and ended up pregnant with his child. Since he was still in college, she couldn't tell him about the pregnancy.
Doing that might just ruin his future.
With that in mind, she decided to give birth and raise the child on her own. She dropped out of college, gave birth, and began working in New York. But her life was not easy with a young child in the house. There were days she had to take off from work to care for her child, and the high cost of living in New York became increasingly tough to bear. Eventually, Catherine realized she couldn't raise her daughter on her own in the city and decided to return to her family home in Nebraska.
I didn't want to go back home, but raising my daughter, Lucy, let's call her Lucy, properly was the most important thing.
Her father was furious when he saw her, having moved to New York on her own accord, and now returning with a child. He scorned both Catherine and Lucy. When my mom asked, "Didn't your mom help you out?" Catherine replied, "My mom always my dad's side. She never really stood up for me, even back in the day." And when Catherine returned home, she found that her mom had gotten deeply involved in some sort of cult.
It was a religion I'd never heard of. My mom seemed to believe that it was thanks to their God that I had returned home. Even when my dad would berate me, she wouldn't say anything to him. But I once saw her fervently praying to some sort of religious talisman, asking it to protect Lucy and me. Maybe in her own way, she believed she was helping us.
After Catherine and Lucy moved back home, her involvement in the cult grew even more profound. Catherine started a part-time job nearby to support them, but most of her earnings were donated to the cult by her mother.
Shortly after I moved to New York, my mom started acting differently. My dad would often tell me, "It's because you didn't listen back then that your mother went crazy."
Unable to bear the situation at home any longer, Catherine, with the little money she had, decided to leave.
I thought living with my parents would have a bad influence on Lucy, so we got on a train to get as far away from them as possible. But Lucy said she was hungry, so we got off here and ended up at this diner. I'm sorry, I didn't plan ahead and spend all our money on the train fare.
You spent everything, so where are you staying tonight?
Upon hearing my mom's question, Catherine looked down, troubled.
You can't sleep on the streets with such a young child. Why don't you stay at our place tonight?
Catherine was taken aback by my mom's offer and initially declined. But when my mom pressed, reminding her of the lack of money and the risk to her daughter, Catherine finally relented, so they ended up staying at our home. That night, while Catherine and Lucy were taking a bath, my mom and I discussed the situation. Do they have nowhere to live? If that's the case, how about letting them stay at our place until they find a home and a job? Said Mom. I don't mind, but we'd be harboring runaways, right? I wonder if that's okay. What if their parents resent us or something?
If it got out that Catherine is here, that might happen. But as harsh as it sounds, there's a luck of the draw when it comes to the family you're born into. Blood ties are hard to break, so running might be the only option.
Mom, who seemed to have glimpsed into many people's family troubles in the past, spoke with weight, and her words resonated with me.
I think she will keep running from now on. If we abandon her now, she'll just start a tough day-to-day life tomorrow. It was supposed to start today, but it would just be delayed by one day.
Imagining that young mother and child lost on the streets. The thought was heart-wrenching. After Lucy had gone to bed, Mom and I asked Catherine if she'd like to live with us for a while. Catherine seemed overwhelmed. I couldn't possibly impose on you like that, she said. With genuine curiosity, she asked, why would you do so much for someone you barely know? Mom replied with a gentle smile, It's human nature to want to help someone in trouble, isn't it?
Just as sudden misfortunes can happen, so can sudden strokes of luck. In life, you have about an equal share of good and bad. So just think of our offer as one of those good moments falling onto you.
Catherine probably knew that even if she left, she might not have a stable life. With a contemplative expression and a voice dripping with gratitude, she said, "Thank you so much." Feeling guilty about doing nothing while staying with us, Catherine helped out at the restaurant and with house chores when she wasn't job or apartment hunting. Catherine, diligent and hardworking, quickly became popular with our customers. As for me, I wished she could stay and work with us forever. About a month later, she finally found a place to live and a job, and it was time for her and Lucy to leave our home. She mentioned her new workplace has a nearby daycare, where Lucy could be looked after.
Thank you so much. I will never forget your kindness.
Catherine said with a smile in front of our house. "It's okay," Mom responded.
All we ask is that you raise Lucy to be a fine young lady.
As Catherine, with tears in her eyes, left with Lucy.
Bye-bye.
The little girl waved and shouted. Mom and I, having grown close to Lucy over the month, sniffled as we waved back. For a while, we kept in touch with Catherine. Although the busy Catherine couldn't always reply, we occasionally updated each other through calls or emails. We always looked forward to seeing photos of Lucy that Catherine would send. Then, about 2 years after Catherine and her daughter left our home, Mom slipped and hurt her back, making it impossible for her to work in the store. With Mom not around, I had to juggle both the kitchen and the dining area. During rush hours, it was tough, and I had put out ads for part-time help. But applicants were hard to come by. Then, one day after lunchtime, the rush had subsided. Catherine visited the restaurant after a 2-year absence.
Hello, David.
Greeted a much taller Lucy, along with a man standing next to Catherine, whom I didn't recognize. Catherine, long time no see.
It's been a while. I'm so sorry for not keeping in touch. I wanted to call before coming over today, but things have been so hectic.
That's all right. It's just great to see you both well. And who's this gentleman? With a somewhat shy smile, Catherine said, "This is my husband."
He's Lucy's biological.
What? Is he? The college student from New York you talked about?
Yes.
Catherine explained that after settling into her new life and gaining some confidence, she took a chance and reached out to Lucy's father, a college student she had met in New York. Luckily, his number hadn't changed, and the call got through. And when he answered the phone, Catherine said she was sorry for disappearing suddenly in the past, that she actually has a child, and due to some circumstances, she can't go back to her hometown and is now raising her daughter on her own. On the phone, he expressed how he had been worried about Catherine after she disappeared. He couldn't change his cell phone number in case she might contact him someday.
We decided to get back together. We even got married. We lived in New York for a while, but
last month, due to a transfer at his job, they ended up moving to a town close to here.
So I finally settled in after moving yesterday and managed to come here. The restaurant hasn't changed a bit, has it? By the way, how's your mom?
Oh, she hurt her back a while ago and doesn't work here anymore, but she's doing well.
Is that so? That's why.
Catherine began to say something but then looked around the restaurant with warm eyes.
That time when you folks helped me, it made me think that maybe if I shout help, there might be someone out there willing to lend a hand. And so I mustered the courage to reach out to my husband. The happiness I have now, it's all thanks to you and your mom. I truly appreciate it.
She smiled and continued.
I saw the ads outside. If you're short on staff, would you consider hiring me? I want to repay the favor. I'm not sure if this counts as a repayment, but if you hire me, I promise I'll give it my all.
Catherine, I remembered your sincere attitude when she helped out at the store for a month 2 years ago. Having someone like her on board would be a godsend. Yes, if you join us, it would be like having 100 people. Please, we'd love to have you.
Thank you so much.
Catherine grinned, looking truly happy.